Deep in the arid expanse of the desert, you'll find a highly isolated pool of bitter water. It's harsh, totally unforgiving, and toxic to drink. But if you look past the waterfall and study the canyon walls themselves, you notice something strange. The rock face is composed of perfectly symmetrical horizontal stripes. Desert landscapes are typically shaped by chaos, flash floods, erosion, and violent weather. Yet here, the geometry is completely uniform. To understand how perfect geometric order forms in an environment like this, you have to read the cliff face from the bottom up. This canyon serves as a vertical time capsule, recording 200 million years of vanishing oceans, global extinctions, and human survival. We start at the lowest visible level of the rock. 200 million years ago, this blistering desert landscape was actually the floor of the massive Tethys Ocean. Those thick white bands you see are chalk. Over millions of years, trillions of microscopic marine creatures died, sank to the ocean floor, and their calcium skeletons compressed into a solid white rock. This cross-section shows how the broad white chalk is interrupted by very narrow, dark lines. These dark bands are flint. They were formed by a much smaller population of rare sea life that had skeletons made of silica instead of calcium. Because these lines are perfectly parallel, geologists know exactly what the conditions were like here. The seafloor sat completely still. There were no tectonic shifts and no major earthquakes to scramble the layers as they built up over the millennia. To build cliffs this massive, the microscopic death toll had to be nearly infinite, raining down steadily year after year. The visual order of this canyon is actually a massive burial ground born from millions of years of continuous biological rain. As we move higher up the cliff face, the biology changes. In these layers, researchers find coiled ammonite shells serving as the dominant biological marker. Then, right around the 65 million year mark, these marine fossils vanish from the rock record completely. They died out at the same time as the dinosaurs. This satellite map shows the origin of that mass death. The culprit was a massive meteorite impact far away in the modern-day Yucatan Peninsula. The impact threw a planetary dust cloud into the atmosphere. That cloud blocked the sun, halted photosynthesis, and ultimately starved the creatures living in the Tethys Ocean. One thin, specific stripe in Israeli desert holds the physical gravesite of a cosmic collision that happened in Mexico. Jump forward to roughly 10,000 years ago. The ocean has long since dried up, leaving a cooler, wetter Ice Age environment. Here you find the Atlantic pistachio tree. It belongs high in the mountains, but it sits permanently stranded in this scorching desert because it managed to survive as the surrounding climate shifted from wet to fiercely arid. Nearby is the Tamarisk tree, which had to actively hack the new hostile environment to stay alive. It uses a process called hygroscopy. The tree secretes a high concentration of salt directly onto its leaves. That extra salt literally pulls whatever microscopic humidity exists out of the dry desert air. The botany mirrors the geology. The plants clinging to these rocks are stranded survivors, desperately adapting to a world that changed overnight. Finally, we arrive at the modern surface, where human history shows up in the rock. We even see it in the bitter waterfall at the canyon floor, named for an ancient Nabataean king, Abdat. Humans also adapted to the severe isolation here. By the Byzantine period, monks were carving caves directly into the sheer cliff walls. The English word monk actually derives from the Greek word mono, meaning one. These individuals came to this harsh geography explicitly seeking absolute physical solitude. The landscape was so deeply ingrained in the culture that it shaped local morality. A famous biblical parable uses the native atad thorn bush, a plant that produces only thorns and offers no shade, as a direct metaphor for corrupt, useless leadership. When you view the canyon from top to bottom, human history barely registers. It is just the thinnest, most recent stripe on the surface. Ein Avdat forces us to recognize that a chaotic history of vanished oceans and cosmic impacts is written squarely beneath our feet.